Welcome to the McGuire Podcast. My name is Brian Cooper. I am the Vice President of Business Development at McGuire and your host for this podcast. At McGuire, we've been helping to store and protect quality water for over 100 years. On this episode, we are joined by Jake Brunoehler, professional engineer and a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers Committee on America's Infrastructure, to discuss the latest report card release, what it means, and how they develop it. Jake, welcome to the McGuire Podcast.
Thanks, Brian. Glad to be here.
First of all, let's start. Tell us about your role on the ASCE Committee on America's Infrastructure and how long you've been involved in this report card initiative.
Yeah, so my current position, I am a member of the Committee on America's Infrastructure, which is responsible for all things report card at both the national level and oversight on some of the state report cards and some of the different economic studies related to infrastructure here in the U.S. I got my start with the whole report card idea 2 report cards ago in Wisconsin. So back during COVID, we were putting together the first report card that Wisconsin had done in over a decade. And so I was part of that effort, got to author one of the chapters and got to even step into some leadership and got to talk about it with some local news outlets when that hit, when we published that. Got to do a lot of coordination with state agencies, trying to get the best data that we could to make the most accurate assessment of the status of those infrastructure sectors. And so really got to take a deep dive at that point. And then a couple of years ago, a colleague really encouraged me to apply for the Committee on America's Infrastructure. And I took the mentality of the worst I can say is no, right? And so got to join. They did accept my application, and that was a couple of years ago. So been now got to be a part of this most recent report card release, as well as the Bridging the Gap study that came out a couple of years ago. And so despite my imposter syndrome that I get whenever I look around the rest of that committee, it's been a wild ride ever since.
That's awesome. For people who aren't familiar, what is the ASCE Report Card for America's Infrastructure, and why do they publish it? What are the nuts and bolts of this thing?
Great question. So I appreciate that. The ASCE Infrastructure Report Card, it's a comprehensive assessment published by the American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCE, right? That grades the current capacity, condition, and performance and future readiness of America's infrastructure across currently nationally in 18 categories. So that number continues to grow every year, but we put that assessment in a more digestible, non-infrastructure professional friendly, something with the grade school report card format. So on an A to F scale, it's issued every 4 years by a team of civil engineers appointed to that committee.
What's the goal behind the report card? What is the overall goal of doing this project?
Yeah, so the whole point really is to be that, to make that assessment, just to have that conversation starter with the public, with policymakers, with those who are in charge of where our public tax dollars and even some of our private investment is spent, and making sure that we're making the most of those dollars in the best way that we can. So that's really just an opportunity to engage with people outside industry with industry knowledge in a way that at least makes sense and makes it something that we can talk about and have that conversation.
You said you started in Wisconsin with their report card and you've kind of moved on. Where has the report card evolved since its inception, and what makes this latest edition particularly significant?
Yeah, so the report card itself has been published. The first national report card was published in 1998. So we're over 25 years now with this document. What's significant about the 2025 report card, there's a few things. One, it was the highest grade ever assessed. So with the current grade at a C, 2021 was a C minus, and 2017 was a D plus. So we keep trending in the right direction. And so with the highest grade in its history. So what the other key items. Oh, sorry, and I said 1998. I missed that by a decade. So 1988.
Okay.
So the grades stayed consistent. This in this most recent release, in 7 out of the 18 categories, grades improved in 8 out of 18 categories.
So nearly half, which is great.
Right, that's great, and it really speaks to. I mean, it makes sense, right? We've seen so much in our news, releases in our news outlets for the last 5-10 years about all of the infrastructure investment that's come through IIJA and through the Inflation Reduction Act, like all of these key legislations putting real down payment towards these infrastructure sectors. It shouldn't be that much of a surprise that we've seen gains on the report card that reflect that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about methodology and some of the data gathering. Can you walk us through the process? I mean, I can't imagine there's only 2 data points in each of these categories. So how are the data points figured out? And then how do you take us through the whole process of starting from scratch till, okay, we gotta see. Okay, what does that look like?
Yep. That's a great question. So each sector really can be a little bit different, but there's 8 grading key criteria for every chapter, every infrastructure sector. That's down to capacity, condition, funding, future need, operations and maintenance, public safety, resilience, and innovation. Those are the 8 key things. Capacity, assessing whether that infrastructure currently meets its current demands, and really looking at future demands as well. Condition, which can be certainly a challenge in many infrastructure sectors. I know I'm much more familiar with the water sector. Much of that infrastructure is buried out of sight, out of mind. Condition assessment can be such a challenge.
Right.
And then funding, analyzing current funding levels, and looking at future investment requirements, and really trying to forecast future funding needs in each of those sectors. And then, future need, projecting our usage changes over time, whether that be, as we use the internet differently now than we did before. So looking at future conditions on water and energy and all those different sectors through that lens. And then operations and maintenance, our ability, reviewing those, our ability to review and properly operate and maintain those different infrastructure sectors with good maintenance practices, making sure that we're keeping those infrastructure sectors up, running, and efficient. And then public safety, considering risks to the public from different infrastructure sectors, especially in view of water, public safety in that regard. And then resilience, determining the ability to withstand future natural disasters and even some human disasters, human-made hazards. And then innovation, identifying adoptions of new technologies and opportunities in research and development in those processes. So, and then those are all then graded on that A to F scale. So a 12-point grading scale, with A being exceptional, B being good, C being mediocre, which is what our current national overall grade is, D being poor, and then F for failing and critical.
So where do you find your data in evaluating these categories? Or is it public data, government reports, or do you do independent studies or interviews and surveys to find this data? Where does it come from?
So much of the data is publicly available. And so it's taking some of our bridge condition reports, our roadway ride quality data, water main break and losses, and all the dollars associated with that. So there's just a few examples. So it just, there does vary wildly from sector to sector. And some categories we really struggle to find data, where we aren't even collecting condition assessment. We don't even really know enough to even assign a grade. Some of the more challenging chapters in that regard are schools, public parks. There's just, we've got such a regimented and such a rigid structure on bridge condition assessment, that based on, some tragedies, in not so recent past, that really changed the way we look at bridges and how they're assessed for their condition and capacity and current ability to withstand weathering and wear.
Who's involved in determining these grades? Are these decisions made by civil engineers alone, or are there broader stakeholders and committees and that sort of thing that comes up with this?
Much of this decision really is left to those industry experts with the American Society of Civil Engineers. So they are, people that have, engineers that have decades of experience, and really are that expert voice in the room. And so it's a collaborative effort. There's a lot of accountability. There's all kinds of processes and protocols, checks and balances to make sure that we're coming to, an assessment that is that can be backed up, that's data driven, that really, as engineers, we don't talk in hyperboles, we talked in facts, and we don't glamorize it. It's not glamorous work. It's dollars, cents, numbers. It's real data. So that's, when it comes down to it, that's really why we keep that right in house with civil engineers.
Awesome. So let's move into drinking water, which is important to us at McGuire because we build and maintain water towers all over the country. Let's look at the water sector. The 2025 report card, what grade did it receive this year, and how does that compare to the last report card that came out in 2021?
Yeah, so America's drinking water infrastructure, the current grade this year, C-. And so trending actually in the right direction. America's drinking water infrastructure, I'm sure no stranger to this on the McGuire podcast, has been a bit underfunded for decades and is putting us, our communities at risk. So, to ensure safe, clean, safe, accessible drinking water for all Americans and communities, we need, smart investments that provide that certainty, the sustained planning and future investment to make larger investments and projects attainable. So those some of the key things about the water chapter in this most recent release.
What are some of the most or biggest challenges currently facing America's drinking water? Because there are a few big ones out there that are starting to happen or are on the horizon.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, the nation's water infrastructure is aging and underfunded. With our costs continuing to grow, as of 2023, that Utah State study that we've talked through a little bit before, the expected life of water main pipes in this country is just over 78 years, and right now the average replacement frequency that we see in water mains across this country is about every 200 years. So there's a gap in there.
Maybe a gap, right?
Just a little bit of a gap. And so and on top of that, we still have more than 9 million existing lead service lines in place, posing obvious health risks and concerns. On top of that, funding shortfalls, continuing with state revolving funds that really are some of the backbones of drinking water funding. And so, our 2024 Bridging the Gap economic study found that the projected gap between drinking water infrastructure needs and investment in 2024 stood at over $300 billion and really is expected to grow by double of that. It's going to be over $600 billion by 2043. So based on that economic study, some of the challenges to our individual utilities, include, gaining infrastructure, emerging contaminants, PFAS, right? And the increasing effects of severe weather. So just all of that adding up, and the cherry on top, as well as the threat of cyber attacks to these utilities.
What are the bright spots? Are there some states or some areas in the drinking water sector that really stood out and said, "Hey, we're doing really good things here"?
Yeah. So what's really great is that many utilities are finding ways to do more with less, that they're finding ways to improve infrastructure through various innovations, right? The ability to identify issues before they become failures, trying to find ways to be more proactive versus reactive with fully implemented asset management plans, right? Like trying to be more thoughtful and more forward looking so that we don't, have water main breaks in the middle of the night that we're all out trying to repair and replace water mains, where you have to spend so much more to do those repairs in a reactive mentality versus a proactive mentality. So those are some of the more bright spots. And those innovations is what's really trying to prepare us for the future.
So right now we're sitting in kind of a rocky political climate where, there's a lot of unknown, and not asking you to be a pundit and give us your prognostication, but what kind of investments or policy shifts as it relates specifically to infrastructure investment, about the IIJA Act and a bunch of these others that, run out here in 2026. And a lot of people listen to this and say, 2026, it's a long time from now. But when you talk about funding and infrastructure, that feels like tomorrow. So what are some of the things that need to be done to make sure we continue to trend in the right direction as we have over the last few report cards?
Yeah, so that's such a great question. And as much as ASCE, we try to, we're going to avoid, commenting on pending legislation. But when it comes to reauthorization of IIJA, the roadmap towards reauthorization, we have to find a way to continue on the down payment that was the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. It was a huge, once in a generation kind of legislation that moved us forward, that moved the needle in the right direction, and finding a way to come to the table and get that reauthorization done is critical. There's some other growing trends and narratives around trying to find ways to cut our infrastructure gap. There's some discussion around the tax exempt status of municipal bonds, which much of our infrastructure is funded through municipal bonds. Protecting that tax exempt status on those funding avenues, that's critical. And so making sure that those key items in the funding tool belt that our municipalities, utilities, and communities use to build and maintain our infrastructure, that's critical.
So as we kind of wrap up, in your view, what does the 2025 report card tell us about national priorities? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so there's three overarching trends ASCE identified impacting infrastructure across all sectors, right? So water and really all of them. So aging infrastructure systems are increasingly vulnerable to natural disasters, extreme weather events, and creating unexpected and often even avoidable risks to our public safety and our economy. Those aging infrastructure systems are threatening that. Recent state and federal investments have made a positive impact, but the full force of increased funding will take years to realize. So we're just starting to see some of those trends come through in the data. As we're seeing, as we're collecting data, we're just starting to see some of the positive impacts hitting condition reports, hitting assessment reports from those investments from the state and federal level. And so sustaining those investments are absolutely key to providing both the certainty and ensuring planning makes it to development, making it through those different stages of a project life cycle, and really just making those larger infrastructure projects attainable. And then third, unreliable or unavailable data on key performance indicators, KPIs of different infrastructure sectors, continues to impact certain infrastructure sectors. There are still infrastructure sectors where data is scarce or unreliable or outdated. And so, how can we make good investments if we don't even know what our current status is? And all of that really trying to improve our quality of life in our communities across the U.S. And we say raise the grades, right? Like as we try and find ways into the B range, sustaining that investment, prioritizing resilience, and then advancing policy and innovation that supports those initiatives.
So how can people listening to the podcast, everyday citizens, elected officials, industry professionals, take action based on the findings of this report card? How can people help?
Yeah, first, one, just find ways to educate yourself, like read into the different infrastructure sectors that impact your own community, and then have those discussions with policymakers. And so really just a lesson in civics, right? Like just knowing the issues that are facing us as different members of different communities across the country. One
of the other things is if people want to do that, if people want to find out more information, we haven't told them yet, where can they find this report card? Where is it located?
Right. So thank you for that. Certainly for anyone that would like to learn more, there is a wealth of information on infrastructurereportcard.org. So that is where all of our historical report card assessments live, both at the state level. So you can look up your own individual state, find out, one, if your state has done a report card in recent years, what those grades were, and take a look at the national report card. There's also, the Bridging the Gap economic study where we analyzed what would, if we, coming up on reauthorization for IIJ, if we snap back to pre-IIJ funding levels, what that would do to the average economic household, the thousands of dollars that would cost us as individual households across America. So all that can be found through the infrastructurereportcard.org website.
So my last question, and this is a fun one, if you had a magic wand to wave over this thing and fix one of the aspects of America's infrastructure overnight, what would that be?
Oh man, if I had a magic wand, I would make every lead service line disappear right now.
Okay.
If I could do that. I mean, I live and work in the water sector, right? And so like that one is so near and dear. I live in Wisconsin. We still have lead service lines, and the potential impacts on our right here in our own communities, on every individual household. If I could do that, oh man, what that would do for this country, be amazing. So anyway, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jake, I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for helping educate us on ASCE's infrastructure report card, what it means, how it's put together, and the importance it has in our infrastructure world.
Brian, thanks for all you guys do. It's awesome. So thanks for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Remember, you can always connect with us by visiting our website at mcguirewater.com. You can ask questions by sending us an email at info@mcguirewater.com. Or you can follow or reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us on the McGuire Podcast.